There's a reason the Pantheon is still standing while modern bridges crack and crumble before they hit retirement age. It isn't magic. It isn't "they built better back then" as a romantic slogan. It's chemistry. And until very recently, we didn't actually know the real method the Romans used to make their concrete heal itself. For centuries, we trusted the written recipe from a famous Roman architect. We treated it like gospel. But in 2023, archaeologists reopened a buried time capsule in Pompeii, a house frozen mid-renovation when Vesuvius erupted in AD 79, and they found something we almost never get in archaeology: an active job site, half-built walls, tools, and piles of the raw mix still sitting there like the workers just stepped away. And what it revealed is brutal. The builders weren't following the book. They were using a hotter, harsher, smarter process, one that creates microscopic repair charges inside the concrete, waiting for the day a crack forms. In this video, I'm going to show you what they found, why it contradicts everything we thought we knew, and why the most advanced part of Roman engineering wasn't the arches. It was the mix in the bucket. Before we dive deeper, I want to ask you something. Drop a comment right now and tell me, have you ever seen ancient infrastructure that's outlasted modern construction in the same location? A Roman road still usable while the highway next to it cracks apart? An aqueduct still flowing while modern pipes burst? And if you're tired of being told that progress means things that break faster, hit that subscribe button. This channel exists for people who still care about how things are actually made and who remember when buildings were designed to outlast the men who built them, not just the warranty period. Let's get into what those Roman workers knew that modern engineers are only now beginning to understand. The time capsule that changed everything. When Mount Vesuvius erupted in AD 79, it buried Pompeii under up to 6 meters of volcanic ash. The city was sealed in what essentially became a geological vault, frozen in time, preserved in a way that almost never happens in archaeology. One particular house was caught in the middle of active renovation. Construction workers were on site making repairs when disaster struck. They dropped their tools and ran. They never came back. And that detail, that interruption, is what makes this discovery so remarkable. Most archaeological ruins only show us the finished product. We find completed buildings, hardened concrete, structures that have already done their job for centuries. But we almost never see the process. We never see the method. We're left reverse engineering techniques from the final result, guessing at what the builders actually did. This site was different. When researchers excavated it in 2023, after it had been partially explored in the 1880s and then sealed again for over a century, they found something extraordinary. Completed walls stood next to half-built walls still in progress. Construction tools lay exactly where the workers had left them: buckets, mixing boards, measurement tools. But the real breakthrough was finding piles of mixed dry materials sitting right there on the floor. These weren't finished concrete. These were the raw ingredients the builders had prepared but hadn't yet turned into the final product. The recipe, frozen mid-mix. That single discovery gave scientists something almost never found in archaeology: direct physical evidence of the mixing sequence, not guesses, not theories based on analyzing 2,000-year-old hardened stone. Actual proof of what the Romans were doing, in what order and why. It was like finding a chef's prep station abandoned mid-recipe, with every ingredient measured, labelled, and waiting to be combined. And what that recipe revealed would contradict everything we thought we knew. Why Roman concrete doesn't die like ours does. We all know the headline: Roman structures outlast modern infrastructure by centuries, sometimes millennia. The Pantheon is still standing. The Colosseum still draws millions. Aqueducts built 2,000 years ago still carry water, but the deeper, more troubling question is this. Why does their concrete behave fundamentally differently when damage occurs? Because here's the thing, cracks are inevitable in any concrete structure, anywhere, ever built. Temperature changes cause expansion and contraction. Water intrusion creates internal pressure. Ground settling shifts foundations. Freeze-thaw cycles tear at the surface. Time itself takes its toll. Physics hasn't changed in 2,000 years. The Romans weren't immune to these forces. In modern concrete, we know exactly what happens when cracks form. Water enters through the crack. It reaches the steel reinforcement bars embedded inside. Those bars start to corrode. Rust expands. That expansion creates more cracks. More water enters. The decay process accelerates exponentially. Eventually, structural failure becomes unavoidable. We've accepted this as the natural life cycle of concrete. Build it, watch it crack, repair it, watch it crack worse, eventually replace it. Roman concrete cracked too. It had to. Same physics, same forces, same water, same freeze-thaw cycles. But then something remarkable happened. It didn't die. The cracks didn't spread. The water didn't win. Structures that should have crumbled after a few centuries kept standing for 2 millennia. Not because they were stronger initially. Tests show Roman concrete is actually weaker in raw compression strength than modern mixes. So if it wasn't brute strength, what was it? Researchers began to suspect the answer wasn't about how the concrete resisted damage. It was about what happened after damage occurred. There was something built into the material at the molecular level, a self-repair system that lay dormant until the moment a crack appeared. Then it activated, and that changed everything. The lime clasts that wait to heal. In 2023, before the Pompeii discovery, MIT researcher Admir Masic was studying a 2,000-year-old city wall at the archaeological site of Privernum in central Italy. He was examining the concrete under magnification when he noticed something strange. Small, white mineral chunks, scattered throughout the concrete matrix, irregular, inconsistent in size and placement. To any modern quality control inspector, this would look like a manufacturing defect, like someone hadn't mixed the batch properly, like contamination, careless workmanship, the kind of thing that would fail inspection and get the contractor sued. But Masic suspected something different. What if these weren't mistakes at all? What if these lime clasts, these little pockets of reactive calcium-rich mineral, were actually functional features serving a specific chemical purpose? Here's the mechanism he discovered. When a crack forms in the concrete and water enters through that crack, the water encounters one of these lime clasts. The water dissolves it, creating a saturated, calcium-rich solution. Then, as the water evaporates or gets absorbed into the surrounding material, that dissolved lime has nowhere to go, so it recrystallizes. And where does it recrystallize? Precisely in the crack itself. It fills the gap. It bonds to the concrete on both sides. It effectively seals the damage, not perfectly, not invisibly, but functionally. The crack stops spreading. The water stops penetrating deeper. The structure stabilizes. This isn't a repair applied by workers years later. This isn't maintenance. This isn't someone coming back with sealant and a cork gun. This is an automatic chemical response built into the material from day one. A dormant healing system, waiting in silence, activated only the moment damage occurs. Think of it like this. Modern concrete is a machine with no spare parts. When something breaks, you call a technician. Roman concrete is a machine that grows its own replacement components when damage happens. But here was the problem Masic faced. One wall isn't proof of a system. Maybe Privernum was special. Maybe that builder knew a local trick. The question remained, Was this self-healing an accident or the Roman standard? Hot mixing, the real recipe. Vitruvius never wrote the Pompeii construction site finally answered it, because this time they didn't just find finished concrete. They didn't just find a completed wall they had to analyze backward. They found the recipe, frozen mid-mix, the actual materials, prepared and waiting. And what Masik's team discovered changed everything we thought we knew about Roman concrete. The Romans used hot mixing. Here's what that means. They combined lime fragments with dry ingredients, volcanic ash, crushed rock, whatever local aggregates were available, before any water entered the equation. Everything was prepared dry first, mixed thoroughly as a powder. Only then, after the dry blend was complete, did they add water to activate the reaction. And that's when something critical happened. When water hits that dry lime ash mixture, it doesn't just dissolve and blend. It triggers an exothermic chemical reaction. That means it generates heat, significant heat. The mixture gets hot to the touch as the lime reacts violently with the water. That heat isn't a side effect, it's essential, because that heat is what helps create and distribute those lime clasts throughout the concrete matrix as it hardens. The violent reaction traps pockets of unreacted lime, those repair seeds, in the hardening structure. They're not accidental impurities that somehow got mixed in. They're deliberately manufactured features, created by a specific sequence of mixing. This is engineered, intentional, replicable. The Pompeii site provided the proof that self-healing wasn't some lucky accident at one location. This was standard Roman practice. This was the method. The piles of dry mixed materials sitting at multiple construction sites, all prepared the same way, proved it. Roman durability wasn't magic. It wasn't superior raw materials. Volcanic ash exists today. It wasn't lost minerals or mystical Mediterranean geology. It was process, method, a mixing sequence that modern concrete manufacturing completely abandoned because it's slower, hotter, harder to standardize, and doesn't fit industrial mass production. We traded durability for convenience, and now we're paying for it. For over 2,000 years, scholars and engineers have relied on one source as gospel, Vitruvius' De Architectura, the definitive Roman construction manual, the authoritative recipe for concrete. Renaissance architects treated it as sacred text. Modern engineers still cite it in textbooks, and Vitruvius was very specific about the mixing process. He described adding water to lime first, before introducing other dry ingredients. A wet mixing process. The exact opposite of what the Pompeii site revealed. The evidence doesn't just slightly differ from Vitruvius, it flatly contradicts him. The materials were mixed dry first, then water was added. Hot mixing, not wet mixing. The complete reverse of the written instructions that generations of scholars trusted without question. Masik himself says it's hard to believe Vitruvius was simply wrong. Maybe there was regional variation. Maybe different techniques existed in different parts of the empire. Maybe we're misinterpreting ambiguous Latin phrasing in the original text, but historian John Sensney from the University of Arizona makes a sharper point, one that's harder to ignore. He says expecting real Roman imperial-era buildings to follow Vitruvius is fundamentally misguided, because actual construction sites rarely matched what elite authors wrote in their theoretical books. Vitruvius was influential to Renaissance humanists 1,000 years later, but to the workers actually building the Pantheon, the Colosseum, the aqueducts, his book wasn't the manual they followed, and this forces us to confront an uncomfortable truth. The real engineering knowledge, the proven working methods that created structures still standing 2,000 years later, didn't live in libraries. It lived with common workers, craftspeople, even enslaved laborers, people whose names we'll never know, who couldn't write, who left no texts, no treatises, no architectural philosophy, but they knew how to make concrete that healed itself. They understood chemistry at a level that modern MIT researchers needed electron microscopes to figure out. We remember Vitruvius because he could write. We forgot the builders because they couldn't, and that's exactly backwards. The final stinging observation in this entire story comes from Admir Masick himself. He looks at Roman infrastructure that has survived 2,000 years of earthquakes, wars, floods, and relentless weathering. Then he looks at what we're building today, and he openly admits, "I'm not sure how much of our things will be there in 2,000 years from now." That should bother you, because modern construction isn't accidentally failing to match Roman durability. We're deliberately optimizing for completely different goals. We optimize for three things: speed of building, upfront cost reduction, and meeting standardized minimum code requirements. That's it. Those are the priorities. Get it built fast, keep the initial bid low, meet the legal minimum so you can't be sued. Long-term resilience? Not on the checklist. Self-repair capability? Not even considered. We don't design materials that heal when damaged. We design materials that meet bare minimum structural specifications and survive just long enough to outlast the warranty period and the political administration that funded them. After that, not our problem. Let the next generation deal with maintenance and replacement. The Roman approach was fundamentally different. They built systems that tolerate inevitable damage. They understood cracks would form, so they engineered the material to respond when cracks appeared. They designed recovery into the structure itself, not as an afterthought, but as a core feature that required no human intervention to activate. That's a completely different philosophy of building. Masick hopes these findings will push researchers to re-examine both Vitruvius texts and surviving Roman structures with fresh eyes, to question assumptions we've held for centuries, to stop trusting the textbook and start trusting what's still standing. And if the principles of hot mixing can be translated into modern concrete formulations, and they can, this isn't magic. The payoff isn't romantic nostalgia. It's fewer catastrophic collapses, dramatically reduced maintenance costs, infrastructure that doesn't crumble before the construction loan is even paid off. It's buildings that outlive the short-term economic thinking, the quarterly earnings pressure, and the political cycles that created our current disposable construction culture. We have the knowledge now. The question is whether we value what the Romans valued: durability over speed, longevity over convenience, systems that work for centuries instead of decades, or whether we'll keep building the same way, fast, cheap, and temporary. So here's the real takeaway. Roman concrete didn't last because the Romans were mystical geniuses. It lasted because they understood materials as systems, not just ingredients. They were willing to do the slow process, the hot process, the technically complex process that produced structures capable of surviving cracks, water, earthquakes, and 2,000 years of time. We traded that for speed and cost savings, and now we're paying for it with infrastructure that crumbles before it's even paid off. But the knowledge wasn't destroyed, it was just buried. And every time researchers question the textbooks and look at what's still standing instead of what's written in the manual, we get closer to recovering what we lost. If you found this valuable, hit that like button and subscribe. We're uncovering more forgotten knowledge every week. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.